Well, you gotta do a little bit more than that.
This year marks the 10 years since the passing of my dad, James Muntz. 10 years ago, shortly after my dad had passed away, a good friend of mine, Katie Mavis, had approached me asking if I would share my testimony and just share our story of what we walked through while he was sick and just how God worked in our lives through his passing. Since having that video and looking back on that video, we saw the power of just our testimony and how God really worked through that situation. And we knew just the impact that that video could make on others that were walking through similar situations. So after that, we decided it would be really cool to document every 5 years and just kind of show how God continues to move in each of our lives, how he continues to walk us through the good days, the bad days, and he remains faithful to us.
Every summer growing up, we would go to Tennessee and spend a week or two at the lake as a family. And I have a very vivid memory of my dad that has always stuck with me. I was pretty young, and there was one day we were out on the boat and I was gonna go kneeboarding for the first time. My dad hopped in the water, strapped me in, and they had to strap me in really tight so that I didn't fly off. And when they were teaching me how to do it, they said, make sure that you hold on really tight and pull back as much as you can. As soon as they started going, they pulled me and I would not let go, and they were dragging me underwater, and I was strapped in so tight that I wouldn't fall out and I wouldn't let go, so my head was just like underwater. And I remember my dad diving off of the boat to come into the water and unstrap me so that I could breathe. And in my mind, I'm like, he didn't even have a life jacket on. And he was like Superman. I literally was like, oh my gosh, he is a superhero, and he did that just to save me. And I think that was like a very innocent and sweet memory that I have, and I just love it so much because that is truly how I think of my dad. Like, he was like our Superman, and he would do anything for us. I don't think I really realized it at the time, but as I've gotten older, looking back, basketball has been a huge part of our family and our bond with our dad. And when he was really sick near the end, he decided that he was still gonna coach me. And I know that it was hard on him and his body. He was pretty weak, but that was such a special bond that he had with my sisters and me from a young age. And so I think that is a really special gift that he was able to give me. And up to the day that he went to the hospital, he was coaching me. Like, we had a game, and that night he went to the hospital and passed about a week later. I think that just shows the kind of man that he is and how selfless he is to do something that is so hard for him in order to benefit me and to share that special moment with me.
So my senior year, I was really fortunate and got nominated for homecoming court. And as exciting of a thing as that was, I was heartbroken about it as well, because at that point in time, my dad was super sick. That was coming right off of the summer that he was diagnosed. He was using a walker to get around, and I didn't think that there was any way Dad was going to be able to walk with me. And so the day that I found out, he started training with my mom to build up enough endurance to be able to walk me across the homecoming field. And so he would practice with my mom walking to the door one day, and then practice walking to the car, practice walking to the mailbox, practice walking to the end of the street. And I never had to ask him to do any of that. He just knew that it was a really special moment. I always think of that as like my walk to remember. And so it didn't matter what happened that night. It ended up being like a really awesome night. And it was his kind of big appearance as well, because no one had really seen him since he was sick. Had just like the most selfless heart, because I mean, it was such a little thing for him to do that, but it meant the absolute world to me. And one of my favorite memories with Dad, and the one that I always like to think about. So yeah, So some of the other things that I just miss about Dad aren't necessarily the big memories or the big moments, but just the small things. I miss the sound of his voice. I miss his laughter. He had the best laugh and just a funny sense of humor. And so I have really core memories of just hearing him laugh at certain parts on shows and movies, and when he would crack some jokes. It was really cool. He never had to be the center of attention in the room, but when he spoke, everyone stopped and listened. And so I think that's such a really special trait that he had. What he said, a man of few words, but when he spoke, it mattered and people really cared. He was so wise, and he was a safe place for everyone, not just our family, but I think when people would come into our home, they knew that they were just loved, and he was just so welcoming, again, in just the small ways that he just really connected with people.
When I think about my dad, I have just the most fond memories of him. My entire childhood, he was just really the best dad that you could really ever hope for. He was funny and kind and silly and just knew how to take care of all of his girls. And when I think back to what I want to pass on to my kids and to future generations, I think of just his consistency and being a good leader, specifically when it comes to adversity. No matter what he was walking through in life, whether it was something small that was a challenge, whether it's being a coach or being a teacher and dealing with adversity, or eventually dealing with cancer, he always handled adversity so well, and a lot of that is because he just leaned so hard into his faith. It's no matter what the world threw at him, no matter what adversities came his way, he was such a good example to us and such a good leader to our family, and just showing us that there's nothing bigger than God, that there's nothing that God won't walk you through, that there's nothing that his hand hasn't already been in. I feel so blessed to have a father that I can continuously look up to and look back at, and the tools that he's given me and the lessons that he has taught me will forever shape my life.
A few things that James brought to my life and into our marriage was patience and just the love of Jesus. And he actually, later on in his life, he actually taught me strength when he was going through his cancer. When we first started dating, he was very, very quiet, and he tended to be a very quiet guy. But I think what I brought to him was a sense of humor, and I also think I brought a little sass to him. So I think we complemented each other very, very well. And I think that we took, patience, strength, humor, we took all that, and God, we took all that into our marriage, and we took all that into raising our kids. And because now we've got, I've got 3 great girls that are strong, that are funny, and that, absolutely love Jesus.
It is so crazy to think that we are coming up on 10-year anniversary of my dad passing away. And so that means that I've spent almost half of my life without him, because I was only 12 years old when he passed. And I think that even though he was only in my life for 12 short years, that he made such a lasting impact on me. And these last 10 years have been the way that they have because of him and because of the lasting impacts that he has made on my life and our whole family's lives. I think I've probably gone through the most transformative years and seasons of my life. So I graduated high school, and then I went to Indiana Wesleyan for college, and then graduated from there, and now I am starting grad school at University of Dayton. And the last 5 years have truly been amazing, and like I said, transformative for me. I feel like I have grown up a lot and learned a lot about life. And I think everything that came with those years have been the highs of my life. A lot of big accomplishments that I'm really proud of. I've made so many amazing friends and built relationships that I'm so thankful for and I'm really proud of. But I will say, I think with that, the low is that my dad isn't here. There's nothing spectacular, I guess you could say, as far as a low goes that I've really been through. But I do think that those big moments, like my 2 graduations and a lot of things that our family has been through, a lot of tough times that our family has been through, is when we've really felt Dad's presence has been missing. And for me, in those big moments, I truly do miss that, and I wish that he were here and he could have been there with me to see these things that have been happening. With the hardships that I've personally been through and my family as a whole have been through in these last 5 years, I am so thankful that we can look at my dad's example and follow that. He was so selfless and willing to do anything for his family, and I think that has been something that he's truly passed on to us, because we would do anything for each other, and he's truly made us stronger, and he's taught us how to love one another well and rely on each other, and more importantly, God, through all the hardships that life throws at us, because they will always come, but God will always get us through it, and our family will always be there for us through it.
So over the last 5 years, a lot of exciting things have happened in my life, and God has done amazing things and blessed me in so many ways. And one of those things is he blessed me with an amazing husband. So in July of 2018, I got engaged to Garrett Gostick. We were on a missions trip in El Salvador, and he not only asked me to be his wife, but he also got baptized, which to this day is still probably one of the best days of my life. Seeing the man that I love give his life to Jesus was something I'll never forget. Another amazing event in July of 2019, I got married, and Garrett and I tied the knot, and honestly, marriage has been the best thing in the world. To have found a partner that just loves me so deeply, and through all my faults, God has truly blessed me, and I'm so grateful for that. So although there were a lot of amazing things that happened, obviously, in the past, we've had to walk through a lot of challenging things in the last 5 years. One of those things being a global pandemic. Talk about a time of pure stress and anxiety. Being a nurse during a pandemic was extremely stressful. There were many weeks where I was overwhelmed with anxiety and panic, and just dealing with the unknowns of what the pandemic was going to hold and how it was going to affect not only me but my family and my patients. It was an extremely stressful time. I dealt with more anxiety in that year than I probably had in my entire life. And having to work through that anxiety was one of the most challenging things I had ever faced outside of really losing Dad. Another challenge that Garrett and I have walked through in the last 5 years is infertility. Growing up, you think, getting pregnant is going to be something that'll just be easy and not challenging, and it's been anything but that. For the last 2.5 years, we've just had a really hard time getting pregnant. And walking through this has been something that is extremely emotional. It's really hard, and you just want so badly to start a family. You want so badly for things in your time. I've been able to really lean into what my dad has taught me. Everything is in God's timing, and everything is in God's hands. And as hard as it's been, I think that's helped Garrett and I really get through this time, is just trusting that God does have his perfect timing for our child, and that he, just because we're walking through this doesn't mean he doesn't love us, that he's going to walk us through it. He's going to be with us on the hard days, but he has big things in store for us.
So over the last 5 years, a lot of things have taken place. mostly really good and joyful things. Like, for one thing, I retired from teaching after 33 years. As a result of being retired, I am working for a company called Pink Ribbon Girls, and it's a nonprofit cancer organization, and we provide rides and meals to cancer patients. I've been able to minister to a lot of patients, and I've been able to pray with them, and I've laughed with them, I've cried with them, and it's just, I feel like God put me in this position to be able to minister to these women, and I really feel like James had a big part of that, because, you know, I just feel like my faith has really strengthened because of him. Along with all the great things that have happened in the last several years, also comes some negative stuff. A year ago, I battled breast cancer, and so luckily it was caught at the very, very early stage, which was an absolute blessing. Going back to what James provided for me, he provided me strength, and so I was able to deal with my diagnosis with strength. I am so lucky that it was caught at such an early stage. And here, you know, James battled stage 4 cancer from the very beginning, and he just battled it with such grace and such strength. He was just awesome throughout the whole thing. So I learned so much from him. And also, I think because I do deal with cancer patients, now I can totally relate with them. We've got great conversation. I can totally pray with them. I can empathize with them. And so that's been a really positive thing, even though, you know, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So, you know, yes, there have been some negative things, but I try to look at the blessings, and I try to teach the girls to look for blessings when they're going through storms. And this was definitely a storm that I went through, but I tried to look at the positive things with it and stuff. So that was a really good thing.
So much has happened. I think even just in the last 5 months, my life has changed dramatically. And so reflecting from when we last did this video, honoring Dad, and just thinking of where I'm at now feels like such a different spot. But like, there's so many blessings that comes with that. In this new season of life, I have decided to resign from teaching. So when I first started, I was just jumping into my first year, where now I'm finding that new career path. I am living in North Carolina now. I was really praying a lot going into that decision to step away from teaching. And one of the big things I kept thinking is, what would Dad think of all of this? Because again, like, I wish that I could talk to him about all of that. There have been such big life changes that I have craved his feedback on and his wisdom through. And so that has been really hard, just trying to navigate life without the one person who really kind of gave great perspective and great godly perspective. So that has been really difficult. But I think one of the things that I've really kind of thought about is how Dad just wanted us to be happy, but more than that, like, he wanted us to be seeking God through it. During this like difficult season of life, the car accident that I experienced was unimaginable, and I have no doubt that I had angels around me that day, and I think Dad was there with me on that day. It was really, really hard and really scary. But it's also one of those things that I have that day to look back on and just know that I was so seen by God. And my life could have been very different after that day, or could have ended that day. But I'm just so grateful, one, that God's not finished with me, and two, that I get to drive past where a miracle happened instead of a tragedy. And I think that my dad just had a hand in that. Yeah, it could have been a really tragic day, and it's a day that I reflect on and think about a lot, and one that I can look at and just, again, I just feel so seen by God. And I just know that as scary and as awful as it was, like, it's a day that I look back on and and just feel nothing but gratefulness and gratitude towards.
I really hope that in the future I can pass on the things that my dad has taught me. Essentially, the biggest thing is how to handle adversity. I hope that I can use the tools that my dad has given me. And really the biggest thing is to just continue to lean into God, continue to trust Him, and to face adversity with faith. And that going forward, no matter what the world throws at us, that we'll handle it with grace, with strength, and with just that deep-rooted faith that God's going to take care of us and that we can rely on Him.
So as far as James's legacy goes, I've got 3 amazing daughters who are strong, who are patient, who are godly women, and I'm also able to share his story to actually some of my Pink Ribbon Girl patients, and some of them have actually told me that they've talked about James to other people as well as to keep his legacy going, not only through the basketball gym that was named after him, but I will definitely be telling my grandkids about Grandpa James.
I think one of the things that I really just want to do is love people well, and that's what my dad did. I think stepping away from teaching was hard. I have to remind myself that, okay, even if I'm not in the classroom, and if Dad wasn't in the classroom, what did he do? He loved people well. And so wherever I'm at, I feel like that is something that I really want to take with me. Is Dad was someone who made people feel seen. He was someone who instantly brought joy into this room. He was a really great listener. He was slow to speak but quick to listen. And so I really want to take those qualities that he had with me. I'm so excited to see kind of what God has in store with these next 5 years, because it's going to be incredible.
In the future, I want to get married and have kids, and even though my future spouse will not know my dad and my kids won't know him, I truly hope that they can have a piece of him through me, and his legacy can live on through me and my family. I think he has left such a lasting mark on all of our lives that even though he isn't here, people will know who he is because of us.
The exciting thing about the future is that it's influenced by the past. The things that my grandfather instilled into my father, that he instilled into me, I will hopefully one day instill into my children. And that's exciting to see the legacy that the people in our families have instilled in us will live on forever.
Well, you gotta
I
do a
see
little
a
bit more.
smile in the sunrise. Look at the stars, but I only see your eyes. The brightest red in the sunset. Break of dawn, right after the storm lifts. And even if I know
Kylie
you're
is
miles
clinging on to
away,
Dad's
close my
haircut.
eyes and pray that I'll dream with you.
How are you? Hi, Dad.
Everywhere I go, wherever I stay, I'm always reminded of you every day. No matter the distance, it won't ever change that you're mine. Everything, everywhere, always. Love till it hurts, till my heart aches. The light in my world on my dark days.
That is
For always you'll be mine. Everything, everywhere, always. Love till it hurts, till my heart aches.
right, Dad.
Light in my world on my dark days. For always you'll be mine.
Good morning, Dad. Merry Christmas.
Everything, everywhere, always.